Okay, sugar. I'm sure you've heard about the new tariffs, but what I bet you haven't heard is that a lot of your everyday favorite items will be impacted. Let's dive into how tariffs will impact your everyday life and what you can do right now to protect your wallet. Okay, sugar. So we just gonna dive right into it. As you can see, we have our resident financial guru here who needs no introduction, Pamela Sams. She is going to join us in this conversation so that we can make sure that we understand what's happening, with the tariffs and what we need to do to ensure that we can still reach our financial goals. Because that's what we about over here on Hey Sugar. Like we got goals, we have financial goals, and what is it that we need to be doing? How do we need to be watching our coins to make sure we're still going for our financial goals? So Pam, thank you so much again for
Yep.
jumping on
Thank
here
you.
and coming on to have this conversation with us.
Yeah.
Um, I think the first thing we need to do is just to make sure we're all on the same page.
hmm
Define what are tariffs. So if you don't mind just kind of giving us a quick
hmm
definition of what are tariffs.
Yeah. Basically, it's a tax that the importer will give to the person who is actually either importing or exporting their particular goods or services to another country. So what happens is that usually if we export or if we import, that person would end up paying the tax on doing so. So the thing about the tariffs on Canada and Mexico is that it has been said that it's going to pass on to that particular country that's actually importing into our country. What happens is that because now that if tariffs are incentivized or put on certain goods or services, the actual business person or business owner will end up paying more for that. And of course, they're going to pass that on to the consumer. So, for example, I know we had a brief conversation about, avocados and things like that. So what happens is that, let's say, Mexico imports avocados to the U.S. for us to make our favorite things, guacamole and things like that. Then they're expecting Mexico to pay a tariff to import into our country. But like I said, if the manufacturer or the business owner, let's say a restaurant like Chipotle, is going to buy from Mexico those avocados, they're going to end up paying a little bit more in basically a tariff or a tax. And because those goods are now more money, again, they're going to pass that on to the consumer because it's costing the business owner more.
Exactly. So what that means, your Chipotle bowl is gonna
Your
go up.
Chipotle bowl, yeah, you already thought you got a big scoop of
Yeah,
guacamole before. Now it's going to cost you almost double for the extra scoop of guacamole.
exactly.
And
Exactly.
that's the thing about it, is that everything is global now, and so everything touches everything that we do
Yes.
in our day to day from an economic standpoint, our
Yes.
personal economy,
Mm-hmm.
because everything comes there. I know don't want to get political on this, but that's the thing about being a global economy, is that labor costs is a lot cheaper overseas, and that's why. And I know the theory is bring more made in America back, but
Mm-hmm.
the whole thing is, if you can manufacture, and not condoning any of these things that happen in China, all these sweatshops and things, but to
Correct.
manufacture let's say just a simple T-shirt, $10 here versus now you got to pay in the U.S. to manufacture that same T-shirt. I
Mm-hmm.
got to pay for the materials. I got to pay for the goods. I got to pay for that employee, which means I got to give them benefits. I got to give them health insurance. Now that $10 T-shirt is more like 20, well, probably 35, $40.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing about the U.S. business owners, that if I can have it manufactured somewhere cheaper, that's where it goes. So this made in America, though it is a great theory, will probably never happen because labor costs are just a lot cheaper someplace else
Yeah.
to do it. And so that's why, the new administration is trying to, I guess, technically penalize some of these countries by, okay, if you're going to import into our country, you got to pay us to do so.
Right.
And that's the thing about it, is that, yes, but that ultimate tax is passed on to the
Comes
consumer
back to
because
us.
the
Correct.
the business owner is not going to absorb more costs for that particular good or
Mhm.
service and not pass it on to the consumer. It's just not gonna
Correct.
happen.
Correct. Correct. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a trickle down.
Mhm. Yeah,
Effect.
exactly.
It trickles down, and who's at the bottom of the trickle? The consumer, the
Yeah,
person that
the consumer.
that's purchasing the item.
Mhm.
And for some of these, like again with a lot of the produce and things like that, because we are in different regions, in
Yeah.
different climates,
Mhm.
so it makes more sense for us to get bananas from somewhere
Exactly. Yeah.
because it's a better environment to grow,
Mhm.
bananas or, as opposed to potatoes, as opposed to, these other things. So
Mhm.
it's something to consider when we're thinking about, like you said, we're in a global economy, why we're in a global economy, and how that we can leverage what you're good at, we're
Exactly.
better together, what you're good at, what I'm good at, how can we, how
Yeah.
share, and share the wealth, so to speak. But for right now, it's like, all right, well, tariffs are here, and
Yeah.
we have to prepare for those things. And that's really why I wanted to have this conversation because I was sitting here, in trying to stay informed, but not,
Mhm.
overwhelmed, and catching up on the information about the tariffs. And I just started digging into it so that I could make my financial plan for what this thing would look like. And then as I was going down the list of things, I was like, oh Lord, we need to bring this to the sugars. Like, this
Yeah.
is a conversation we need to be having, sugar, to
Mhm.
make sure that we're not surprised when we go to Chipotle and it's a $2 extra. And it's like, whoa, wait a
Yeah.
minute. That could
Mhm.
that could easily, that 50 cents here or extra $2 there could easily start to derail us from our financial goals, what
Exactly.
we had set for this year, or and again, sugar, if you've been around any amount of time, you know that Pam has taught us what we need to be doing in the summer, how to keep a whole out of our wallet during the Christmas season.
Mhm.
And one of the things that she has drilled into us is that those little extra pennies, those extra dollars, those they all add up. They
Mhm.
all, and so when we're talking about the tariffs, I wanted to really bring it home to how it would impact us, and I think one of the biggest ways that it'll impact us, that we don't necessarily see, is in just some of our everyday, day to day purchases, like not just extravagant purchases, but just in the
Mhm.
everyday purchases, like we were saying, avocados,
Yeah.
Um, now I went down
Exactly.
a rabbit hole.
Mm.
I
As we all did when we heard about these tariffs, we just like, okay, how is this going to impact?
I went down a rabbit hole, and one of the questions that I asked was, okay, so what does this like impact? Like, tell me the different like areas that are impacted, in terms of goods that are imported that would now be, exposed to these tariffs. And I'm gonna just go through just some of the ones. I have a
Mhm.
list here um that kind of took me by surprise. So I did not realize. I knew that we got a lot of our, produce and things, from
Mhm.
Mexico, but sugar, strawberries, raspberries,
Right.
broccoli,
Mhm.
cauliflower, watermelon, asparagus, tomatoes, lettuce, spinach, onion. That's a salad. Your salad bar,
That's your
basically.
salad bar. Yep.
Your salad bar comes from
And
Mexico.
and
Okay.
we know that the salads are already, expensive to buy versus, the greasy hamburger. So just imagine all of those ingredients now costing more.
Costing more. You already said the avocado. The
Mhm.
US imports about 9 billion worth of fruit from Mexico just last year alone. And
Mhm.
over 3 billion of that was just in avocados. We really love some avocados, do we not?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. Our avocado guacamole, our avocado toast. Yeah.
oh my goodness. Like I was, but even when we start talking about because this also includes Mexico, Canada,
Mhm.
and China, and so apple juice. We get a lot of apple juice from
Apple.
China.
Mhm.
A lot of our crab, lobster, our whole fish, our ham comes from
Mhm.
Canada.
Canada.
Some Gerber baby food is made in China.
Mhm.
On the Nestle website, it's 413 factories in 85 countries, one of those being China. So our baby food. Um, now our liquor. Okay, let's go down. Let's go to the liquor
Let's
store.
go to the
Okay,
yeah.
let's go to the package store. We know that the Don Julio, the Casamigos, all of the Coronas that comes from Mexico. But the one that I think that I was like, oh, this might be a shocker for some. Crown Royal, that's
Mhm.
Canada.
Yep.
So all of those, the our spirits and wines and beers and Heinekens, all of those now will have a higher tax, a tax on it. I jumped over to automotive, and this was one that
Mhm.
really caught me by surprise. So the US relies heavily on our neighbors, Mexico and
Mhm.
Canada, for parts.
Yep.
Well, what that ultimately will end up doing, because if it costs more to repair your car and the parts for your car, what that will do is it's going to result in a spike in our car insurance, because
Right.
now our insurance companies will have to pay more for the
Mhm.
parts and
For
the
the part.
repair of the car. So then
Mhm.
that means the premiums on our insurance will have to go up to cover whatever the new repair cost is for our cars. That was one that took me by
Mhm.
surprise. Like I was kind of anticipating some of the produce items and but I was like, the car insurance? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
things. It's funny you were talking about the t-shirt.
Mhm.
The US is actually the world's largest importer of
Mhm.
clothing and apparel. And
Exactly.
I've seen some posts, people like, oh, well, your Shein orders and your Temu
Yeah.
orders are not gonna cost more, but should it is that doesn't even scratch the surface of it. Some of
Mhm.
our brands that we see, when we see them, we think America,
Yes.
like
Mhm.
Nike.
Yes.
Just do it. Like that's being imported from,
Imported. Yeah. Exactly.
Lululemon. They're
Mhm.
being imported from China, and so there's a lot of brands, and even some of the American brands like Levi's,
Mhm.
there are a bulk of what's made for Levi's are made here,
I'm here. Yeah.
but some pieces, some parts, depending on the item or the apparel, they are
Yeah. Are imported.
imported in.
Yeah.
So for some companies, we have a mix, of
Mhm. Mhm.
but the moral of the story is the price is going to start to
The
go up,
prices, yeah, the
you
prices
know.
are gonna creep in. I know on that list, once you were doing the rabbit hole, as I was
Yup,
doing as
yup.
well, is that, home prices were already up there, but now, we get our lumber from Canada. They have, better, trees and timber,
Trees.
so
Mhm. Mhm.
lumber prices, so housing prices, of course, will get or, demand for that particular. I know at one
Mhm.
point, I think a few years ago when we had our supply chain issue, that's what happened is that we weren't able to get these goods or the materials, and that's why, things start to
Yeah.
go up as well. With that, she's like, okay, now, your house was expected to be delivered by X amount. Now it's delayed because we can't get
Right.
the material. So same thing, that's going to happen. We mentioned automotive, that's going to go up, which will also, like you said, affect your car insurance, housing prices, our day-to-day clothing, or our food, everything is, like you said, our spirits,
Every
some sugars like to drink. So
I just and that's why I had to make sure when I went
yeah,
to the
exactly.
red hole and I saw that, I was like, "Ooh, sugar, Crown
Ooh, yeah.
Royal and
Yeah, you may
Bottle,"
want to
and
put a cap on those drinks
we
when you
may
go out.
wanna, I mean, but it's just, and that's why I was saying the everyday things, because I don't
Mhm.
think it's really, I didn't until I just tripped and fell down a rabbit hole to even think
Mhm.
about things like our cleaning supplies. So like
Yes. Mhm.
Clorox,
Yep. Mhm.
Lysol,
Mhm.
a lot, Fabuloso,
Yeah.
the things that we
Yeah.
use
That we use. Yeah.
every day to clean, like they're imported. Or again, depending on, so like Clorox and Lysol, a lot of things are made here,
Mhm.
but it depends on if it's the
That's
white
yeah.
versus the all-purpose cleaner versus, you know, certain products, certain pieces of, the Lysol are
Or
imported,
yeah, imported in.
in. Something else that I saw, and this one wasn't that surprising, but it didn't cross my mind until I was, kind of reading it, are pharmaceuticals.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
So
definitely.
so a lot of our pharmaceuticals for a while now, and I experienced this just kind of with my own and some of my medications, they're
Mhm.
coming in from India and, a lot of
Okay.
other countries. But I didn't realize that, we get a lot of our just kind of the over the counter, the ibuprofen, the
Mhm.
acetaminophen, the hydrocortisone, penicillin from China.
Exactly. Mhm. Yeah.
And so it's something to think about that we don't necessarily on a day to day, we're not necessarily reading the label to say, where is this made? And so
Yeah.
we'll just start seeing an increase in price for,
Mhm.
these just some ibuprofen that we're looking like, wait a minute, why is this
Yeah,
costing
right.
this much?
Mhm.
Because we didn't think about those type of day-to-day things, or like what you said about housing prices and what
Yeah.
that could, potentially do, or so it's just a lot of things to consider when
Mhm.
we're thinking about the future repercussions of what that means for our personal economy and our bills and what we need to do.
Yeah.
So this is now then where we come to Pam and say, okay, Pam, what should we be doing right now?
Mhm.
And what should we not be doing right now to ensure that we are, again, just protecting our wallet, being mindful, but
Mhm.
also staying on track for our financial goals that we've set? Because now is not the time to just say, like, oh, well, there's so I can't reach my goals. No, we have to
Mhm.
stay on track. But what are some of the do's and don'ts that you've been sharing with your clients of what we should and shouldn't be doing during this season?
Yeah. It's really just a matter of being aware, as we had talked about before, of going through kind of your line items on how these things could be affected in your own personal economy. So if you're on prescription drugs, or if you are wearing things, or you're ordering from certain areas, clothing, your cleaning supplies, just know that ultimately those things could be affected as well. I always go through, I think I had shared with you before, kind of the T chart on what's needs and
Right,
wants.
necessary. Yeah, yeah.
So this would be a good time to say, okay, now if this is going to go up, do I really need it right now? And where if
Mhm.
we're in this environment where things could be a lot higher, or inflation goes up, do I need to continue doing these things that I have been doing? And
Yeah,
can I free up cash flow that way, as well? But kind of being aware, taking survey of some of the areas that could go up in your own personal economy is where I would start. And then, of course, do I need them, or is this a needs or a wants, as well? Because bottom line, as we mentioned before, is are you, if you're kind of limited already in your resources, and then your margins become thinner and thinner,
mhm,
you
mhm,
need to make some hard choices on, do I
yeah,
need these things
yeah,
in order to kind of continue to increase your margins? Because once it gets down that way, you know it's really hard to affect what you would end up doing. So you need to kind of take a survey on, what do I need, or is this a need, or is this a want, and what
mhm,
does my margins look like with some of these things that may increase.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and a lot of times, we will put things as needs that are
Hmm.
actually wants, and we'll say that
Exactly.
they are a need because
Hmm.
it's something that we've become accustomed to.
Exactly. Yep.
We're used to like it's a given, so to
Hmm.
speak, like, of course I use Clorox, but of course
Hmm.
and so it's one of these things where we also have to evaluate,
Hmm.
how are we defining need versus, want, to really get kind of back to some of the basics here.
Hmm.
Um, a
Yeah.
couple of do's and don'ts that came to me. The first thing, and I'm gonna tell you, the first thing when I was kind of reading this and was like, all right, maybe I should share this with the sugars. the first thing that I thought was, okay, sugars, do not go hoard. Do not
Yes,
go
do
buy
not do that.
all the toilet paper. Do not, sugar, do not.
I
Um,
did see that online where people had grocery carts of, back to where we were with toilet paper, cleaners, eggs, all of these things that when that list came out, like you said, there were things that would go up. People started, like you said, hoarding. Do not do that.
do not do that. And let me tell you why. Because that actually creates a domino effect
Hmm.
that drives up the costs higher and
Higher.
faster. Because a lot of these
Exactly.
wholesalers, they have like back storage of, maybe 6 months to a year worth of toilet paper. And, it's not from,
Inventory. Yeah.
of course, not from the produce because produce,
Yeah.
spoils and things like that. But there's a backstop. So if you start going to hoard everything, and then we're basically cleaning out the coffers,
Hmm.
quicker. And so then that then starts to drive up, the cost as well. So we think like, oh, let me buy it now before the price goes up. But that
It
actually
has, has the opposite effect. It's
exactly, exactly,
basic economics, love supply and demand. Once
exactly,
your demand supply shrinks, then the demand goes up, and then of course price is going to go up.
exactly.
So yes, it can have the inverse relationship when you think you're going to get it cheaper now when you go back out and buy. Just when we went through the pandemic with the toilet paper,
Yes,
that we saw the same thing in
yes,
terms of these things costing a premium. But back to what taking the survey of what you use, maybe cleaner products. So if you're going to do cleaners, not Clorox, maybe you go to something like a earth based type of thing that doesn't require
uh-huh,
a lot of imported goods into it.
uh-huh,
So, what are the alternatives to what you
exactly.
are currently using that could be a lot cheaper?
Exactly, exactly. And that was one of the things that I thought of as well, that we could, this is an opportunity to start looking at maybe some reusable,
Hmm.
renewal,
Yeah.
things. This will be a perfect time if you ever thought about starting a garden. Sugar,
Hmm.
this would be a
Yes,
perfect
would be
time
a good time.
to start
Seeds are
gardening.
cheap. Seeds are cheaper.
Get you a little plot in the little
Hmm.
backyard, this would be a perfect time to start doing that. So if you know that you love tomatoes or you love
Hmm.
avocados, and this would be a perfect time to start experimenting with some of those things. This could even for some like holistic
Hmm.
options, so we can start looking at some of the different medicinal herbs and
Hmm.
supplements and things like that, so that we're not necessarily totally dependent on some of the pharmaceuticals. Now, this is sugar. This is not. I am a PhD, not an MD, so this is not medical
Yeah,
advice. Do this?
exactly.
No, 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 no. Disclaimer,
Neither
disclaimer,
one of us
disclaimer.
are in the position to give medical advice, but
Absolutely not.
yes,
Do not come
doing
off
that.
your meds because of, no, no, no. We're just speaking just
Yeah,
in
Dr.
general.
Tierney and Pam said, "Go do something different."
No, no, we did not. No, we did not.
Yeah.
But this is just a time to kind of start looking at some of the
Hmm.
things that we can do for ourselves, even in some of the cleaning supplies, like using
Yeah.
a lemon and some of
Exactly.
those
Yeah.
old remedies that our
Hmm.
great grandmama and what they
Yeah.
used to use, like pulling some of those things back out. This is a perfect opportunity to do that as well. So definitely do not hoard. Do not panic. Do not
Hmm.
panic, sugar. Do not panic. We will get through this.
Yep.
It's not going to be totally the end of the world. I know it may feel like it, but it's not. It's not
Hmm.
going to be the end of the world. Look at some renewable things. What else did I have on here? Make a plan.
Yeah.
You know,
Make a
this,
plan as always. Yeah. It's always
this is
key
where
is to again recognize, make a do an inventory, and then make a game plan on how
exactly,
you're going to get through that. Because
exactly.
that's where, if you panic and you're like, oh, or throw up your hands and say, well, it is what it is, and I'm just going to end up
Mhm.
paying higher prices. You don't want to be in that boat either. You want to make a
Right,
plan for yourself, for your, like I said, your own personal economy
exactly.
with that. But not to say I got a crystal ball or anything, but economists has kind of talked about, if you implement tariff, this is what's going to happen. We saw, like it was last Friday, we saw the stock market react to that news.
Hmm.
That there was Dow was down 600, 700 points. So it is
Hmm.
not a favorable view on it.
Exactly.
So it may not go on right now. It's on a pause. As you know, as things start to tumble last week, it's like, okay, well, that we didn't want that to happen. So they
Right.
put a pause on it for now, at least like I said, 30 days or something like that. So it may not go through, just based on, the way the markets behave.
Things are
So,
going.
but if it does occur, have a strategy or a game plan to make sure you get through it appropriately for yourself and your own personal household, as well. But I did want to mention one thing you were talking about, growing your own vegetables. If
Mhm.
you're in an area where there's a community garden, kind of,
Mhm.
together,
Mm.
you start growing your own fruits and vegetables, that would be a good thing as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think this is just an opportunity for us to just come together, period. You
Hmm.
know, as people, as because we need each other,
Yes.
and there's nothing like kind of impending like discomfort or doom
Yes.
to drive us back
To drive us together, exactly. Yeah.
together and remind us that we need each other, and so
Mhm.
this is I love that suggestion to like the community gardens, and if there's one near you, join it. If there's not, create one,
Create one, yeah.
where in your neighborhood where we can have like that community aspect with it. Right along with that, this is also a perfect time to start looking for and paying attention to American made products and making
Mhm,
a commitment to buy American made products and also to support local small
mm,
businesses,
mhm, yep,
to really lean into those type of areas to support again each other and kind of build that community that we've kind of gotten away from. But so again, I know things can be discomfort or it can be uncomfortable and it can cause us some discomfort,
mhm,
but there's always a silver lining. There's always, something that we can glean from it that can help make us, better in it. And I think that's one of the biggest lessons in
yeah,
this whole thing is that
exactly.
we need each other, to really lean
Mhm,
into each other.
yeah, and we know, this is a disheartening time period, but we as a people have always been resilient and we know how to
Absolutely.
do. So,
Absolutely.
we go way back historically, our ancestors did what they had to do. We're called up to do the same thing right now, is
Absolutely.
to collectively do what we have to do. We'll get through it, but be resilient, but be smart with the way you
Absolutely.
react to the situation as well. And don't throw your hands up in hopelessness saying, there's nothing I can do. There's plenty you can do. We talked about it in
Mhm.
this episode as well. Um, and really just give people some guidance and some solutions.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, even if it's just even if it's just when we're cleaning our bathrooms, and you know how sometimes we'll spray that
Oh
Tide
yeah,
cleaner until we about choked. We done about
exactly.
passed out.
Yeah, knock yourself out.
You knocked yourself out because we're using so much cleaner because we got to make sure it's
Exactly.
cleaner. We're using so much laundry detergent because that's how we've always thought
Mhm.
about it. So where now we might need to actually use the measuring cup of the
Exactly. Yeah.
laundry detergent, or or actually pay attention to how much we're spraying or how much we're using. So even if it's just something just
Hmm.
tiny like
Just
that,
some, yeah.
there's something that we can all do to again help us to weather the storm,
Hmm.
ride the wave, not
Yeah.
panic, but also make sure that we are protecting our wallets and still reaching our financial goals.
Yep. Exactly.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Pam, as always, I thank you
Mhm.
for jumping on here with me just
Yeah,
for a quick,
definitely.
yeah, 1, 2, so that we can have this conversation and get it down to like everyday life, like out of
Yeah.
the news, and let's just get it down to everyday life
Hmm.
and what this means for us and what we could be doing to make
Yeah.
sure we're
Yeah,
doing it
and
well.
that's the thing is that you hear kind of this, this macro situation where what's
Right,
going on in the world,
right.
but how does it go down to a micro, which is your
Micro.
personal situation? How is this going to affect me? Because everything, like you said, ultimately trickles down.
Yeah.
So you have to have a strategy and game plan. But definitely, I appreciate the opportunity. It has been a lot going on recently, and so I'm sure this episode would really resonate with people because it's so much news and so much noise going on
No.
that people are just like, I don't know what's going on. What should I be doing? So
Exactly,
definitely, I think people will find value
exactly.
in this conversation.
Absolutely, absolutely. And as always, sugar, if you need to talk to me, if you need to talk to Pam, Our information is below. Please do not feel like you have to, ride the struggle bus by
Mhm.
yourself. If you need help coming up with your plan, looking at, your finances, seeing where you can kind of work in your margin, creating that T-chart, please give Pam a call. Her information is below. If you're just overwhelmed, you checked out, you're anxious, please give me a call so we can,
Mhm.
so that we can talk. But just know that you have resources, you have tools, and we're here to help you. All right, Sugar. Thank you so, so much for joining us today. We'll see you next time. Take care.